Hey folks, welcome to another video. In this video, we'll be discussing about portal hypertension. Etiology. Portal hypertension is present if the portal venous pressure is at least 6 millimeters of mercury or more, and the portal venous pressure more than 10 millimeters of mercury is clinically significant, and anything beyond 12 millimeters of mercury is associated with complications. The two most common causes of portal hypertension worldwide are cirrhosis and hepatic schistosomiasis. In Western countries, portal hypertension is typically the result of cirrhosis, with non-cirrhotic portal hypertension accounting for less than 10% of all the cases. In other parts of the world, non-cirrhotic portal hypertension due to causes such as schistosomiasis and portal vein thrombosis are the leading causes of portal hypertension. The causes of portal hypertension can be classified into prehepatic, intrahepatic, and posthepatic components. Some of the important etiologies for prehepatic causes include portal venous thrombosis, splenic vein thrombosis. Intrahepatic causes include hepatosplenic schistosomiasis, cirrhosis including fibrous proliferation, and massive hepatic metastasis. The intrahepatic causes are the most common causes of portal hypertension. Posthepatic causes include Bucchiari syndrome, right-sided heart failure, and constrictive pericarditis. Clinical features of portal hypertension. Depending on the cause, portal hypertension may be either acute or chronic. Acute portal hypertension arises from acute portal vein thrombosis, while chronic portal hypertension may be due to chronic thrombosis, cirrhosis, or schistosomiasis. Among asymptomatic patients with cirrhosis, about 80 to 90% will have an elevated portal pressure gradient. The portal pressure gradient is defined as the difference in pressures between the portal vein and the inferior vena cava, which is normally less than 5 millimeters of mercury. 40% of these will have esophageal varices, a complication of portal hypertension. The signs and symptoms of the underlying disease, like cirrhosis or right-sided heart failure, along with increased blood flow via portosystemic anastomoses, can occur. This increased blood flow via portosystemic anastomosis can occur via paraumbilical veins and epigastric veins causing caput medusae, or via the rectal veins causing hemorrhoidal or anorectal varices. The anorectal varices are sometimes incorrectly referred to as hemorrhoids. Hemorrhoids are a different entity. Via the veins of the gastric fundus and the lower esophagus causing esophageal varices, and gastric or epigastric varices, which may develop resulting in risk of life-threatening esophageal variceal bleeding. It can also cause congestive splenomegaly followed by signs of hypersplenism. Upper gastrointestinal bleeding from portal hypertensive gastropathy, gastrointestinal ulcers, or diffuse lower gastrointestinal bleeding can all occur. The hyperemia of splanchnic vessels and a pre-existing tendency to bleed may increase the risk of hemorrhage in these patients with upper GI bleeds. Transudative ascites can also be one of the important signs in patients with portal hypertension. Diagnosis. A diagnosis of portal hypertension can be made if a patient with a known risk factor for portal hypertension, like cirrhosis, has clinical manifestations of portal hypertension. In such cases, additional testing is not needed to confirm the diagnosis. However, if the diagnosis is in doubt, the hepatic venous pressure gradient can be determined to help confirm the diagnosis. Hepatic venous pressure gradient. The hepatic venous pressure gradient is measured to approximate the gradient in pressure between the portal vein and the inferior vena cava. It can quantify the degree of portal hypertension due to sinusoidal resistance to blood flow. A normal hepatic venous pressure gradient is between 1 and 5 millimeters of mercury. Portal hypertension is present if the hepatic venous pressure gradient is at least 6 or beyond millimeters of mercury in pressure. Portal hypertension typically becomes clinically significant when the hepatic venous pressure gradient is at least 10 or more millimeters of mercury in pressure, at which point varices start developing. Once the hepatic venous pressure gradient is beyond 12 millimeters of mercury, patients become at risk for variceal bleeding and the development of ascites. Clinical manifestations of portal hypertension, like ascites, in a patient with a known risk factor, like cirrhosis, may already suffice for diagnosis. In addition to investigating the underlying conditions, the diagnostic steps may include evaluation of the patient with an ultrasound, abdominal CAT scan, transient elastography, and/or esophagogastroduodenoscopy. On duplex ultrasonography, specific findings like visualization of cavernous transformation of the portal vein indicates portal vein thrombosis. It can also show certain unspecific findings like portal vein dilation to 13 millimeters or beyond. A dilation of the portal vein to more than 13 millimeters may also result from other causes and is therefore not a reliable indication of portal hypertension. Similarly, a portal vein of less than 13 millimeters does not exclude the possibility of portal hypertension. Certain indirect indications for ultrasonography includes visualization of increased blood flow via portosystemic anastomoses using duplex ultrasonography. Note that collateral pathways examined include the usually obliterated umbilical vein located in the round ligament of the liver and veins in the phrenicocholic ligament, the gastric fundus, or abdominal wall. All are indirect indications for portal hypertension. Ultrasonography can also detect ascites and splenomegaly. An abdominal CAT scan is helpful in detecting portal vein thrombosis. Transient elastography using ultrasound is a non-invasive method for detecting hepatic fibrosis. Esophagogastroduodenoscopy helps in the assessment and, if necessary, treatment of esophageal varices. In patients diagnosed with portal hypertension, esophagogastroduodenoscopy should be repeated on a regular basis to identify varices before they start rupturing. Treatment. The treatment of portal hypertension can be two-pronged. One of the prongs will include medical therapy. The other prong includes surgical corrections. Treatment of portal hypertension. Medical therapy. The first-line medication for patients with portal hypertension includes a non-selective beta blocker like propranolol or nadolol. It inhibits the beta-2 adrenergic receptors in the gastrointestinal tract, causing splanchnic vasoconstriction, which results in a decreased portal and collateral blood flow, which eventually causes decrease in the portal hypertension. It also is used to prevent variceal bleeding. Beta blocker treatment in patients suffering from advanced liver cirrhosis may lead to circulatory dysregulation. If negative effects outweigh the benefits, beta blocker treatment should be reconsidered. Portosystemic shunts. Transjugular intrahepatic portosystemic shunt or TIPS. Indication for TIPS. Patients with persistent, recurring, or treatment-resistant upper GI bleeding resulting from portal hypertension, like from esophageal varices, require TIPS to decrease the portal pressure and hence further decrease the risk of variceal bleeding. Patients with refractory ascites with acute thrombosis of the portal vein also require treatment with TIPS. TIPS, when combined with local catheter-directed thrombolysis, is recommended, as combining these two procedures will lead to sufficient portal blood flow, an effective shunt volume, and reduced portal pressure. Patients with hepatorenal syndrome who are not eligible for or are awaiting liver transplantation can also benefit with TIPS. However, this procedure is not recommended for the general treatment of hepatorenal syndrome because of the risk of hepatic encephalopathy. Procedure: a needle catheter is inserted via the internal jugular vein and is passed along to the hepatic vein. This catheter is then pierced through the liver parenchyma to the intrahepatic branch of the portal vein. Further, expandable metal stents are placed and the site-to-site portocaval shunt is maintained. This assures blood drainage from the portal to the systemic system, thus lowering the portal pressure. Contraindications for TIPS: pre-existing hepatic encephalopathy or cirrhosis, as per the child's Class C, patients with heart failure, severe pulmonary hypertension with pressures more than 45 millimeters of mercury, uncontrolled systemic infection or sepsis, and hepatic cysts or tumors along with cavernous transformation of the portal vein following thrombosis are all contraindications for TIPS procedure in patients with portal hypertension. In patients with cavernous transformation of the portal vein, TIPS will not be effective because the reduced blood flow in the recanalized portal vein leads to insufficient shunt volume. Total portosystemic shunts: the portal vein is completely shunted to the vena cava, thereby reducing portal pressure. Total portosystemic shunts lower the risk of variceal bleeding and may reduce existing ascites. However, as the liver is completely bypassed, there is a high risk of encephalopathy. Selective portosystemic shunts: the portal vein is partially shunted to the vena cava, thereby reducing portal pressure. This partial shunt prevents varices while continuing to allow portal perfusion. Selective portosystemic shunts, therefore, have a higher risk of recurring variceal bleeding, but a lower risk of encephalopathy compared to total portosystemic shunting. Complications: complications include esophageal variceal hemorrhage, which refers to bleeding of dilated submucosal veins of the distal esophagus and is a dangerous consequence of portal hypertension. It is the most common form of upper GI bleeding in patients with cirrhosis. Portal hypertensive gastropathy: this condition is caused by cirrhosis or portal vein thrombosis, which can cause gastrointestinal ulcers or diffuse lower GI bleeding. Other complications include ascites, spontaneous bacterial peritonitis, hepatorenal syndrome, hepatic hydrothorax, hepatopulmonary syndrome, portopulmonary hypertension, cirrhotic cardiomyopathy, and portal cholangiopathy. Prognostic implications of hepatic venous pressure gradient thresholds: the risk of developing complications of portal hypertension and mortality rates increase as the hepatic venous pressure gradient values increase. Various hepatic venous pressure gradient thresholds have been noted to have prognostic significance among patients with cirrhosis. In patients with compensated cirrhosis, the hepatic venous pressure gradient of 10 millimeters of mercury results in development of gastroesophageal varices, causes development of hepatocellular carcinoma. It causes decompensation after surgery for hepatocellular carcinoma. If the hepatic venous pressure gradient is 12 millimeters of mercury, there's a likelihood of causing variceal bleeding. If the hepatic venous pressure gradient is 16 millimeters of mercury, the first clinical decompensation in patients with varices and high mortality can occur in patients who have compensated cirrhosis. In patients with decompensated cirrhosis, a hepatic venous pressure gradient of 16 millimeters of mercury results in variceal bleeding and has a high risk of mortality. A hepatic venous pressure gradient of 20 millimeters of mercury, especially in patients with active variceal hemorrhage, it will be difficult to control active variceal hemorrhage, and 1-year survival in these patients is very, very low. The hepatic venous pressure gradient of 22 millimeters of mercury will result in a higher mortality in patients with alcoholic cirrhosis and those with acute alcoholic hepatitis. Hepatic venous pressure gradient of 30 millimeters of mercury has a higher risk to induce a spontaneous bacterial peritonitis. That concludes our video on portal hypertension, and we hope that you liked our video, and we look forward to seeing you in our next video. Thank you for watching.